Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We begin in the Lithuanian capital of Vilnius, where South Korean President Yoon Sung-yeol is attending the main events for invited partner nations to NATO on the second day of the summit of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. All this happens amid North Korea's fresh round of missile launch earlier in the day and the ongoing war in Ukraine. Our presidential office correspondent Soo-young is in Vilnius to fill us in. Soo-young, let's start with President Yoon's remarks at the NATO Summit session with partner countries, where he spoke about deterring North Korea's provocations.
Hi, Tongmin. Yes, President Yoon has called for stronger global condemnation and responses to North Korea's nuclear and missile provocations as he addressed leaders at a meeting of 31 NATO countries extended to invited nations on Wednesday. Saying that North Korea's missiles could reach not only its neighboring countries, but also cities like London, Paris, Berlin, even Vilnius, he emphasized that the regime's provocations are a threat to global peace and security. Yoon voiced his appreciation for the alliance's condemnation of the regime through a joint communique released the previous day, where the member nations also called for North Korea's complete, verifiable and irreversible denuclearization. NATO's statement in 2022 on that note did not include North Korea, and the alliance has not issued a joint condemnation of the regime's nuclear and missile programs since 2018, so that would be 5 years.
North Korea's nuclear threat also featured heavily in Mr. Yoon's talks with leaders of the Asia-Pacific 4 nations held prior to the NATO Summit session.
That's right. As you said, early Wednesday morning, President Yoon Jung-min met with the leaders of Japan and Australia, who strongly criticized North Korea's missile launch, but they met with the leader of New Zealand as well. And they all, of course, stepped into their multilateral dialogue of the so-called AP4 nations. And the session was moderated by Mr. Yoon. The leaders noted how the North Korean provocations and the ongoing war in Ukraine show the increasing need for collaboration between Indo-Pacific countries, as well as with those of the Atlantic, as their security challenges are not just confined to one bloc. Wednesday marked the second time that they had gathered for AP4 talks after the countries first attended the annual Security Summit as observer nations last year, and comes amid efforts to increase collaboration between countries with shared universal values. According to Yoon's office, the AP4 leaders agreed to close NATO and Indo-Pacific cooperation, the strengthening of cooperation with Pacific Island states as well. They also agreed to build resilient and diversified supply chains, as well as ramp up cybersecurity cooperation.
And on increasing value-based collaboration and global solidarity, let's go back to the President's NATO Summit speech, as he also highlighted the ongoing war in Ukraine and Seoul's future cooperation with NATO.
Right, so the president rather emphatically promised that he and South Koreans will stand with Ukraine until the day when the freedom of Ukrainians is fully restored. He also pledged to contribute to the NATO Ukraine Trust Fund to build up Kyiv's resilience in that regard. And furthermore, reflecting on Korea's new bilateral partnership program with NATO, which was adopted on Tuesday, covering 11 areas of cooperation, the South Korean leader highlighted cyber cooperation and expanding military intel sharing as particularly important areas going forward, with Seoul leading Indo-Pacific efforts in cybersecurity by establishing an international cyber training center. Now, South Korea became the first Asian country to join NATO's Center for Cyber Defense last year, and it's been participating in NATO's annual large-scale cyber exercise called Locked Shields. Yoon said that the growing use of digital media and cyberspace are becoming tools for distributing fake news and propaganda by authoritarian and totalitarian forces, who he said use unhesitant use of war, violence and manipulation of public opinion, which challenge international norms. So in this regard, Mr. Yoon said that nations that share common universal values must cooperate more firmly in solidarity in this very hyper-connected world where Asian and European security issues now cannot be separated. That's all from me for now. Back to you, Tongmin.
Right, thank you for keeping us updated, Soo-young.